She should have been slipping a ring onto her finger and promising forever. Instead, Magnolia Voss was sprinting barefoot through waist-high grass, her once beautiful gown in tatters and streaked with blood and mud. Her chest heaved with each frantic breath, the sharp sting of thorns still fresh across her arms. What was meant to be the happiest day of her life had twisted into a nightmare. Just hours ago, she had stood behind the old church doors, bouquet trembling in her hands, nerves fluttering in her stomach, not from cold feet, but from something far worse. That's when she overheard him. Cormac Dullen, her groom, his voice sharp, commanding. He wasn't discussing wedding plans. He was ordering her father's execution. Cold, calculated, like it was just another chore to tick off before cutting the cake. Her heart had nearly stopped. Her father, the man who raised her with gentle hands and endless faith in people, especially in Cormac, that trust had now signed his death warrant. Magnolia hadn't waited. She ran. Now. A dilapidated barn loomed ahead, its roof half collapsed, its walls weathered with age and neglect. It wasn't safety, but it was shelter. She clutched her shredded skirts and bolted for it, pain lancing up her legs as her bare feet struck rough ground. The distant thunder of hooves reminded her his men weren't far behind. She pushed through the barn doors, breath ragged, heart threatening to burst from her chest. The air inside was thick with dust and the sour scent of old hay. She pressed herself against the door, willing her racing pulse to calm. That's when she heard it, a soft sound, not from an animal, but from something else. A whimper, low, frightened. Her eyes adjusted to the dim interior. In the farthest corner, nearly swallowed by shadows, she saw them. 7 children. Wide eyes, thin bodies, clothes that barely held together. The oldest couldn't have been older than 12. The youngest was maybe 4. Fear clung to them like a second skin. For a moment, no one moved. They stared at her like she was a ghost or a threat. A wild-eyed woman in a torn, bloody wedding dress, hair loose and tangled, looking every bit as dangerous as the men they were clearly hiding from. Then a boy stepped forward. Sandy hair, defiance burning in his eyes despite his frail frame. His fists were clenched, though they trembled from hunger. Behind him, the others huddled close. A pair of twins, a boy with a poorly wrapped arm, a tiny girl clutching a corn-husk doll, and 2 more boys who couldn't tear their gaze from a ruined gown. Outside, horses snorted. Men barked orders. They were close. Magnolia felt the burn of tears press behind her eyes, but she blinked them back. These kids were terrified, and now they weren't the only ones in danger. She crouched down slowly, her voice soft. "What's your name?" she asked the boy. He hesitated. Then he nodded. "I'm Finn," he said. "Them's Lucy and Lily." He nodded toward the twins. "Marcus," the boy with a bandaged arm. "That's Rosie with a doll, and the 2 staring at you are Tommy and Sam." Magnolia gave a slow nod. "I'm Magnolia," she whispered. "I'm not here to hurt you." Lucy, her voice brittle and dry, asked, "Why you bleeding?" Before Magnolia could answer, Rosie stepped forward, her small voice full of old pain. "You running too?" That question hit like a blow to the chest. "Yes," Magnolia said quietly. "I'm running too." Finn's shoulders loosened just slightly. "Who from?" "Bad people," she answered truthfully. Marcus nodded solemnly. "Same as us. They killed our ma and pa said we seen too much." Magnolia's breath caught. That kind of loss, that kind of horror, it wasn't something children should know. Yet here they were, hiding in the dark, starved, scared, and alone. Boots crunched outside. Men's voices grew louder. Search everywhere. Came one call. She couldn't have gone far. If they found her, they'd find the children. And Magnolia didn't need to guess what would happen next. She scanned the bar and moved toward the door, finding a thick wooden beam. Her hands gripped it tight as she barred the door just as the handle turned. Shouts erupted on the other side. A shoulder slammed into the wood. "She's in there," someone growled. Finn grabbed her dress, tugging urgently. "There's another way. Back wall's loose. We've been using it." but the door shuddered again. Dust fell from the rafters. Cormarmac's voice rang out, smooth and sharp. "Magnolia, darling, come on out now. Let's talk like civilized folks." She flinched. That voice, it had once promised her a future. Now it promised death. Marcus pointed through the cracks. "They've got fire." A flicker of orange danced across the boards. Smoke would come next, then flames. She turned to Finn. "Show me." He led her to the back wall. Several planks were barely hanging on. Big enough for a child, maybe. Not for her, not in this dress. She turned to the others. "Listen," she whispered. "I'll get you out, but I need you to be brave. And quiet." Rosie clutched her doll tighter. "You gonna leave us too? Like the others?" Magnolia's jaw tightened. "No," she said, fierce now. "I won't." Without hesitation, she began tearing at her dress. Silk and lace fell away as she transformed herself. No longer a bride, but something stronger. The children watched in silent awe as Magnolia became someone who could move, someone who could fight. "Tommy, Sam, help me with the boards." The boys jumped to action. One by one, the children began slipping through the gap. Magnolia helped guide them, heart pounding. The door behind them groaned again. Another kick. It wouldn't hold much longer. Finally, only she remained. She ducked low, squeezing through the splintered gap, ignoring the way which scraped her skin. As her feet hit the ground outside, Finn grabbed her hand. "This way," he hissed. Smoke billowed from the barn behind them. Magnolia didn't look back. She wasn't running anymore. She was leading. The wedding bells should have been echoing through the valley by now. Instead, Magnolia's bare feet tore through the tall grass, her shredded gown clinging to her like a ghost. The silk, once pristine, now clung to her legs, soaked in sweat, blood, and dirt. Her lungs burned with every breath as she stumbled through the overgrowth, branches clawing at her arms, thorns slashing tiny red ribbons down her skin. Hours ago, she had been a bride, standing just behind the church door, bouquet trembling in her grip. But then she'd heard it. Cormac Dullen's voice outside, not soft with nerves, but sharp and cold, giving orders to take out her father the moment vows were exchanged. Her sweet, trusting father. A barn rose up ahead to the haze of panic, broken and half collapsed, but to Magnolia, it was a sanctuary. She sprinted the final steps, pushed open the warped wooden door, and threw her back against it to breathe. The scent of moldy hay filled her nostrils, but another sound cut through, the soft, frightened whimper of something alive. She squinted into the shadows. Movement. 7 pairs of eyes stared back at her from the darkness. Children, ragged, starved, wide-eyed, none older than 12. The youngest might have been 5. Their limbs looked like sticks beneath the torn fabric of what used to be clothing. No one moved. They looked ready to bolt or fight, or both. Magnolia realized what a terrifying sight she must have been, wild-eyed, bloodied, barefoot in a torn wedding dress. One boy stepped forward, fists clenched despite his obvious hunger and fear. The silence broke. A small voice, rough and hoarse, whispered, "We didn't do nothing, lady. Please don't tell." The words hit Magnolia like a blow. She crouched down, voice soft. "I'm not here to hurt you." The boy hesitated. "I'm Finn. That's Lucy and Lily," he said, nodding toward a pair of girls clinging to each other. "That's Marcus. He's hurt. Then there's Rosie and the little guys, Tommy and Sam. I'm Magnolia," she said gently. "And I'm running too." Rosie stepped forward, doll clutched tight to her chest. "From bad people?" Magnolia nodded. "Very bad." Marcus' voice trembled. They killed our parents. Said we saw too much." Outside, the sound of hooves and shouting men shattered the moment. "They're here," Magnolia whispered. "We have to be quiet." The door behind her shuddered under a hard kick. Dust floated down from the rafters. She turned to Finn. "Is there another way out?" He nodded. "Back wall. We made a hole." Magnolia followed him as he led the way to loose boards, just wide enough for a child. Flames flickered at the corners of her vision. Cormarmac's men were setting the barn ablaze. "Get them out." Now, she said. But just as Finn started through, heavy hoofbeats pounded the earth. A rider stopped outside. Through the slats, Magnolia saw horse legs. No one dismounted. Then a whistle. 3 short notes, too long. Finn's eyes widened. That's the signal. What signal? But the boy was already calling softly. Boone? Is that you? A voice replied, deep and gravelly. Yeah, boy. You got fire coming from the front. Lucy called out, There's a lady with us. She's running too. A pause. Then the voice, Ma'am, I don't know who you are, but 6 men are about to burn that place down. If you want to survive, listen close. Smoke was thickening. The door cracked and groaned behind her. I'm listening. Name's Boone Delaney. I've been watching over these kids since they escaped. My horse will carry maybe 3 or 4, but we gotta move. Magnolia didn't trust easily anymore. How do I know you're not with them? A sharp laugh. The same bastards chasing you killed my brother last week. Trust me, we're on the same side. The barn door exploded inward with a shower of embers. Time was gone. Finn, is he telling the truth? The boy nodded without hesitation. He brought us food. His brother helped Armand Pa. Take the youngest 4. Magnolia told Boone. Rosie, Marcus, Lucy, Lily. I'll find another way with the older boys. Through the widening smoke, she helped each child to the gap, one by one. Rosie's fingers brushed hers, small, trembling. Go. He'll keep you safe, she whispered, as Boone secured them to his horse. He pushed something through the slats. 6-shooter, he said. 3 shots. Make M count. The cool metal felt strange and heavy in her palm. There's a creek 2 miles north. Follow it to the old mine camp. We'll be there if you make it. From above, Finn's voice broke through. Miss Magnolia, the window stuck. Cormac's shadow appeared in the smoke. Magnolia didn't hesitate. We're going up. The ladder groaned beneath each boy's weight. Finn, Tommy, Sam. As Tommy climbed, a gunshot shattered the barn wall inches from his head. Magnolia raised the pistol, hands shaking, heart pounding. She squeezed the trigger. The sound roared in her ears. The kick threw her arm back. The bullet missed, but it bought time. The boys scrambled higher. Another shot rang out. Magnolia fired again. Missed. Up. Go. Smoke filled her throat. She coughed, eyes stinging. The fire had reached the support beams. The whole barn trembled. Cormac's voice rose above the chaos. I know what those kids saw. Magnolia. You can't hide them. She climbed fast, breath ragged, gun in hand. When she reached the loft, the boys were struggling to force open a window. Stand back. She slammed the guns but into the frame. Glass shattered. Cool air poured in. But it was a 15-foot drop. Too far. She scanned the loft, found a coil of old rope, tied it to a beam, tested it. Finn, you're first. Then Tommy. Then Sam. One by one, they slid down. Finn first, landing hard but safe. Tommy next. Sam last. Then Magnolia. Just as the loft groaned and collapsed behind her, she hit the ground and rolled, scraping her hands and knees. She gasped for air, gathered the boys, and ran. Behind them, the barn roared as it collapsed into flames. But they didn't look back. They didn't stop. Magnolia had made a promise, and she intended to keep it. The flames hadn't even finished licking the rafters when Magnolia heard it. A faint cry, almost drowned out by the roaring fire. She turned to Tommy, who had just pointed out a thick rope dangling from the barn's pulley. We can use that to get down, he said. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. Finn went first, sliding down with a speed that betrayed years of hard-earned independence. Tommy followed him, then Sam. Magnolia was about to join them when that cry echoed again. It was unmistakable now, a child's sob, thin and scared, coming from deep inside the inferno. Did you hear that? She shouted to the boys below. They paused, confused. We got everyone out, Finn answered, but doubt crept into his voice. Another whimper sliced through the heat and smoke, and Magnolia's heart dropped. There weren't 7 children. There had been 8. Somewhere in the chaos, one had been left behind. "Miss Magnolia, we gotta go." Sam called out from below. Above, the barn groaned like a dying beast. The beam strained. Time was vanishing. Magnolia grabbed the rope, but instead of escaping, she used it to lower herself back into the thick of the smoke. The heat slapped her across the face the moment her boots hit the ground. Every breath tasted like ash. She stumbled through the smoke, guided only by the sound of crying and the hope she wasn't too late. "Where are you?" she coughed, choking on soot. "Keep crying, honey. Help me find you." "I'm here," a tiny voice replied, trembling. Magnolia crawled forward, blinking away tears and smoke. And there, tucked behind an overturned trough, she saw him, a small boy, no older than 3, cheeks stained with soot and tears, clinging to a wooden toy horse. She scooped him up. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Danny," he whispered, burying his face into her shoulder. "I got scared. I hid." Above, timber split and cracked. Even Cormarmac's men were pulling back now, shouting to abandon the barn. Their retreat meant Magnolia had one last chance to reach the ladder, and she took it, clutching Danny tight. Each rung burned her palms. Her arms screamed with the effort, but she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. The boys were yelling her name from the ground. The rope she'd used was gone, pulled inside during her descent. And now, with Danny in her arms, there was no easy way down. The window was high, the ground too far. "Catch him," she shouted. Finn stepped forward, arms outstretched. "I got him." With every fiber of courage she had, Magnolia let go of the little boy. Danny flew through the air, and Finn caught him, stumbling backward but holding him close. Then it was her turn. 15 feet. Bones could break. But she didn't have time to think. A thunderous crack split the air. The main support beam was giving way. "Magnolia!" Boone's voice rang out from outside. She glanced down. There he was, on horseback, directly below the window, reins taut, waiting for her. Another snap above. The roof began to fall. She jumped. She landed hard across the saddle behind Boone, pain flashing through her side, but she was breathing, alive. Behind them, the barn caved in, collapsing on itself in a storm of sparks and shattered wood. Boone spurred his horse forward, galloping through the smoke toward the cluster of rocks where the children waited. Magnolia counted them again: Rosie, the twins, Marcus, Sam, Tommy, Finn, and now Danny. All 8, alive. But the danger wasn't over. Gunshots cracked behind them. Cormarmac and his men had regrouped and were coming fast. "We make it to the creek," Boone shouted. "We've got a chance." They reached the kids just as the bullets zipped past. There was no time. Boone quickly shifted the smallest children onto his horse with Magnolia, while Finn helped the older boys mount the second. Magnolia felt Rosie's tiny hand cling to her scorched dress as they fled. Behind them, Cormarmac's fury boiled over. "You think this ends here, Magnolia? They saw everything. You'll never be safe." She twisted around, aimed Boone's revolver, and fired. The last bullet didn't hit its mark, but it sent Cormarmac's horse rearing in panic, giving them a few precious seconds. They reached the creek just as the sun crested the hills. The cool water splashed up as the horses waded through. The children huddled close, clinging to one another. Boone led them upstream. Behind them, Cormarmac reined in at the edge of the water, teeth clenched, hatred in his eyes. But he didn't follow. "He won't cross," Boone muttered. "Federal land. He knows better than to start a fight where the army watches." Magnolia nodded, every muscle aching, every nerve on edge. But as they moved deeper into the creek's bend, her breath began to slow. "Are we safe now?" Rosie whispered. Magnolia looked around. 8 faces, 8 survivors, 8 reasons she'd burned her past to the ground. She reached down, brushing soot from Rosie's cheek, and nodded. "Yeah, sweetheart, we're safe now." The dress she'd once been forced into was now a ruin, blackened by smoke and fire. But as she looked around at the children she'd saved, Magnolia had never felt more like herself. Behind them, smoke from the barn spiraled into the sky. Ahead lay uncertainty, sure, but also the promise of something new. She wasn't running anymore. She was leading.